Hey y'all, I'm going to teach y'all how to make some seed bead earrings. This is a seed bead earring. This is what I'm going to teach you how to make. It's using a single brick stitch weaving pattern with fringe. Hid this top part. That's the brick stitch pattern. That's the woven part. This is the fringe. This is the fringy part, the tassels. You can put them right here too, but that's a different design and we're not doing that. So let's get started. Okay. Here's a needle. I have all the information in the bottom, and that's my thread. I don't double it, I single it. And see those beads? That's what we're gonna start with. Here we go. Okay, so 2. That's your first column, for lack of a better word. Okay, so you put the needle up the 2 beads that are closest to the little end where the tail is. And then you kind of stack them next to each other. Like that. And then down through the other 2. And that keeps them in place. And it's the beginning of your first row, your base row of your brick stitch. You're going to be building up and it's going to taper up from this row. So you'll have to do this over and over again. So you grab 2 beads, and since the thread's coming out of the bottom of the column, you go in through the top, just like that. And then pull it tight, and then you go up through the bottom and out through the second bead. And then pull it all the way through. This first row especially, but definitely the first 3 or 4 or 5 columns are going to be wonky. It's okay. You can adjust them as you go. And now that it's coming out the top, we'll put the needle through the bottom. And it alternates each one you do. And for this pair of earrings, I have 13 columns across in total. So you'll do this 13 times. And then when you get a little far and they're established, you can kind of pull the little tails and kind of squeeze them together. Yeah, like that. And now through the top. And then back up to work the next column. Then we have 5. Yep. So keep going. Okay, now here's 12. I'm going to show the last column and then we'll move up to the second row. So down through the top. The reason why I worked 13 is because once we work back up here, you can see the tail is down at the bottom on the opposite end, and then this guy is on the top at the left side. You can do even columns, but you'll have to weave it differently, and I'll show that in a different tutorial. So we go in through the second loop, not the first one, and we grab 2 beads. That establishes the first row. So we're under the loop, and then we're going to go back in through the same bead through the bottom. And then through the top of the first bead. And then you'll bring it around, see that? And up through the second bead from the bottom. That just keeps them in place, sitting next to each other nicely. That's how every row starts. If you're tapering up, there. And so from here on out, we'll just take 1 bead. One. Okay. And then you work through the next loop that's joining the 2 columns below it. So they're alternating like a brick. And then pull it through. and then up through the bottom. Oh, fuzzy. Okay, get it in there. There we go. Great. And then you'll work them like that all the way to the end. I'll show you a few more before we move on. And inevitably, you'll bend your needle. As you can see, mine's a little bit bent. And you got to be really patient with yourself, because if you force something, you don't finesse it, you might accidentally poke yourself. I've done that a million times. It's not fun. Okay, through the loop again. See? Wait. Get out of there. Okay. And then up through the bottom. And doink. Cool. Okay, and then you're just going to work the rest of the row like that. Comme ça. Okay, we're at the last guy. I'm showing you because it can get a little loose where the tail is. It feels a little weird. So if you tug on it too much, it might loosen up that first column. So just be very mindful and ease it through when you're first getting a feel for it. After a while, it'll be muscle memory if you don't throw your phone across the room after this tutorial or whatever you're watching this video on. I'm just happy you're watching it. Okay, so you can tug on the top and on the tail at the bottom. Right there, and then right here. And that'll keep it taut. Just like that. And then 2 beads because we're starting a new row. And then you go into the second loop. You skip that first loop. See? Blink right there. Perfect. Yeah. Sometimes they get caught on the tail. Even if you make the tail longer. Okay, I'm going to turn it around so you can see what I'm doing. And then you'll just work it like you did the previous row. So you go up the second one and down into the first one. And to get used to it, you won't have to go through each and every bead. You'll just kind of double them up sometimes, like that. And then when you pull this part taut, it'll lay the 2 seed beads right next to each other very nicely. And try not to pull the string too tightly. In the beginning, I did that. I pulled them very tightly because I was afraid they were all going to come loose, and then it just kind of makes it harder to work back into your stitches. And it also can make your earrings curl. So you keep going all the way until you get to the top. I'm gonna leave 3 seed beads left in this row, and then I'm gonna put my little loop over it. But if you wanna work it all the way up to 2, that's fine. I do both. But for these earrings, I left 3 because that's what I wanted to do. So I'm gonna go ahead and do 3 here because I already did 3 in the first one, and we don't want them to be inconsistent. Right there. See? 3 and 3. So we're gonna do 2 gray beads and 2 blue beads and then 2 gray. So 3 beads on either side of the loop. Makes like a little rainbow. And so I like to go down a few rows. It doesn't matter how many, really. Just get it down there far enough. I go just like maybe 2 rows above from my foundation row. There, like that. See? Yay, they look the same. Whew. Okay. And then go over 1. Pull it up through the bottom. See that? And then I'm going to go back up through that same edge all the way up. I like to do this because I like to go back through my looped beads up top to reinforce it. Although this Fireline stuff is pretty heavy duty. Like, yeah, it's heavy duty. And then I go down this side. Wait. Do the same thing. Go back, yeah, but we're gonna weave it that like a zigzag, because this is how you would weave in an end. I've seen different methods. I've knit and crochet, and it's kind of the same thing. And just do whatever works for you, but just make sure it's secure. And again, with this type of thread, it's really secure. But I like to go just about all the way across. You know that stuff's not gonna come undone. And I like to stay away from that base row again, because that's where we'll work the thread when we put the fringe, when we attach the fringe. So I don't like to have a lot of threads in the same beads if I can help it, if I can avoid it. And that's always the tricky part when you're weaving in the ends, which is why I like to weave all my ends in at the end. But you'll see here in a second, I'll show you how you can weave in an end at the beginning of your fringe work. So here I'm just at the end of all my crazy zigzagging. Before I cut the thread, I like to put it down a few rows. I don't know, in my mind it seems more secure that way, like it won't fray out. And then we snip it. There's usually going to be a tiny little spot poking out, and with this Fireline you can burn it with this guy. Yeah. Yay! See, you kind of see it go down, and you can kind of see it, but that'll be the back and this will be the front. So there's your top piece, which is the woven single break stitch, and now we'll work the fringe. See, I really like long fringe because it has weight, therefore they don't curl and warp a lot. But another thing I like to do is not use this. This is the standard. I prefer this stuff. I ended up using it because I had nothing else, and I actually like the way it lays. If I could get hemp in this weight, I would use that, but I just don't like the nylon. Okay, so that little guy, he's gonna be my back. So when I work the fringe through, I'm going to keep this side facing me. And I'm using lighter blue instead of black or charcoal, so you can kind of see. But for the sake of making these wearable later, I made them the thread a little darker blue. So I work in from the top. I've done other things, I've seen other things done, but this is what I like to do. I don't use Fireline for the fringe because it doesn't lay. I like the fringe to lay and not have its own thing and defy gravity. Okay, so here is where you can work in that one end, but I don't want to do that. I like to have it open in case I mess up. So you guys can do a much simpler color work here to start out, but I wanted to do something fun because I wanted to do that, and I hoped it would catch your eye and you would click on my video, and hopefully this tutorial is doing justice. So anyway, this first fringe, strand, you loop around that bottom bead so it catches. So you skip the first bead, the bottom bead, and then you go through the bottom of the second bead. Oh no, it's out of frame. There you go, see? If you don't do that, then all your beads will just come off the thread and your needle will go up all of that work you just did. They do make needles that are longer, so for fringe work like this, it can go a lot faster, but I didn't want to dig around for my longer needle. And with that nylon thread, you can use a single thread. You don't have to double it like I have here. but I doubled it because once I go through, I have 4 strands and they still fit. It just, again, it makes me feel better. It's not proven. It just makes me feel better. And then you go up through that first column. So you came down through it, threaded your beads, put them back up through, and then feeding back up. That makes sense. There we go. And that first guy is going to be wonky. He's going to come loose. That's why I like to leave him unwoven up top, because as you work each column, each strand of beads, they're all going to shift. And I don't like to weave the fringe until I'm absolutely certain I've messed with the tension. So there we go. There's the first guy. And you work it like that all the way across to the last one. And you start, see how it's coming out the bottom? You start with that top bead. I have started with the bottom bead, not thinking, and then had to take all the beads off of my thread because I was dumb. Okay, maybe I wasn't dumb. I just wasn't paying attention. So hopefully I'll be paying attention this time. There we go. And you just work it all the way down. So if you want to do your own colors, cool. If you want to map out, get real ambitious, you can do it on graph paper. They have free beading templates that you can download and print. Pinterest, Google, whatever. Here we go. And then up through that second column, blink. Yep. Yay. See, they get wonky. Because when you're starting out any row, it's always going to be wonky. Sometimes I push the beads up from the bottom and then I pull. It's kind of weird to explain, but once you start working fringe, you'll know exactly what I'm saying. Okay, go down through that third column. That first base row where we did 2 beads each, that's what we're working through. And then you'll just keep doing it. And because this one is so wide, with 13 columns, it's impossible to work with thread that will basically work all the way through to the end. At some point you'll run out of thread. I like to swish them around like that. So here I ran out of thread, and this is what I do. I make sure when it starts to get short, I measure it once, and then I'm coming back up through and I measure that. And I like to leave, see, like that. And then I like to leave enough thread from that point to weave in. So you won't end up in trouble. And you certainly don't want to put a knot in the middle of your strand. I've done it when I first started. It sucks. It doesn't work. They always come out of the middle of your strand in between beads because it's thread that's just hanging out. So you are safer to just work it all the way up through here. Like that. And then weave that in. Normally I don't weave it in right here, but I'm going to do it just to show you guys what it looks like. And that way I won't have a bunch of thread hanging around. And if I need to make any adjustments, I can twist the fringe all along and tug at them and push them. And I have the slack at the very beginning, which is why I didn't weave in that first piece. And sometimes the needle just doesn't want to go through some of those beads that have already been woven together, and I'll sometimes use my pliers to pull, just to tug a little bit until it gives. But you never want to force it too much because you can potentially bust a bead. And the worst thing ever is busting a bead in the middle or the beginning of your woven beads. There's a way to fix that. I'm going to make a tutorial on that too. It's not pretty, but it's better than just throwing the piece away or tossing it off to the reject bowl or whatever it is that you do, or starting over. If it's for somebody else, I would start over, or I would fix it. If it's for you, then, you know, whatever. So now I'm going to weave this in very much like I did the Fireline, but sort of in an up and down instead of back and forth. But we all know up and down and back and forth is a good combo. Talking about weaving. Okay, so now I'm going to go down a row. And just make it as secure as humanly possible. Again, some beads get a little cranky. They like to be snug in their spot, and then you come in trying to work more thread into them, and it's just, you're not happy with it sometimes. Other ones are fine. Okay, and then back up just for security purposes, so I can sleep at night. And back down. Y'all, I've been wanting to do these tutorials for forever now. I'm so happy that it's happening. I like to burn the ends of the fringe thread too, even though it's cotton. It still works. Yay! Yeah, and just twist them back and forth. Let them settle into their spots. And now we're going to start at the new one. New fresh thread, middle of the earring. So again, I work from the top and I just work all my way down. You could, this is what I was talking about earlier, you could potentially just weave in that end right now and go back and forth, up and down, zigzags and everywhere, which way. And there's nothing wrong with that. I am impatient and I just want to get, in my brain, I just want to get the fringe done. So I start from the top and work my way down. The reason why I don't work like maybe 1 or 2 beads above is because I don't want the thread to come through while I'm working that new strand of beads. So I like to start kind of far up there and the beads catch the thread. So if I end up tugging on it a little bit too much, they don't come out. Again, if you weave in that end, then you won't have that problem. But I like to leave it open in case I screw up and forget a color or forget 2 or 3 beads or mess up my pattern. I just don't like to weave anything in prematurely until I absolutely know for certain that all my beads are where they are or they need to be and everything is positioned properly. It's the worst when you find yourself having to go back and try to unweave that end that you wove into the brick stitch because you missed 1 bead or 2 beads or whatever. Not fun. Okay, so we're at the last guy. Going through that last column. And then work it up. I see now I have thread everywhere. And then I work all the way up because I've done a lot of weaving in ends towards the middle and the bottom, so I kind of want to get up as far as I can to do this last guy. And here they are. And I do this, I kind of mess with the fringe and I adjust it as I work all the way across. It really helps them settle into place, or at least I've convinced myself of this. Now I work all the way back down. I'm leaving a lot of my weaving ends for you guys to see, so you'll feel more comfortable about what you're doing, because I questioned a lot and learned from mistakes. Just when you think you've woven in enough, do a few more rounds, a few more zigzags, a few more rows, a few more columns, whatever. And I like to use these big eyes for these last bits. Although if you use the nylon and you use a single thread, then you can just thread that end into a regular needle. But I like to make things difficult. I do love how versatile these large eye needles are, because you can move the thread on either end as you work, and it just slides down the belly of it, and it still catches it on right there, like that. And you can bend the crap out of them, so it makes it easy for weaving, especially if a very, very short tail. So again, you get this guy and you put that Fireline tail, the very first tail we made, and you put it up that second column. And you can weave it in all wonky and crazy or whatever, or you can just put it up a few rows and then burn the end, which is kind of what I did here. I went all along the edge. Yeah, and that's totally fine the way it is. Just pull it through, snip it off, and secure it with a flame. Yay! Okay, so now for the ear wire. This is the side where my thread is visible, and this facing us is the nice pretty side. You open it up, and that curved spot goes in the front. The visible thread will go in the back. But from far away you can't tell anything, but I'm just, I'm picky. I like details. And be careful here. I've accidentally grabbed onto my bead and busted it with the pliers. Don't do that. Okay, so here they are. You can set them once you're done. I'm gonna make a little video clip about that, and then you adjust them like so, and then hang them to dry and put them on.